Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can analyze the construct of gang stalking. So sometimes with this construct, the people who believe they are subjected to it call themselves targeted individuals. Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoy this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. So before I talk about the construct of gang stalking, I think it's important to distinguish this construct from what's referred to as individual stalking. I guess one could use the terms regular or traditional stalking as well, although that seems a little unusual to put it that way. So the idea is that when we think of the word stalking, we think of one person who is going after another, right? So I'm going to use the person A, person B situation. So person A is the stalker and person B is the victim. So the way we think of it is that person A is connected to person B in some way, or they used to be connected with person B. Person A engages in a pattern of behavior where they watch person B, they follow person B, they attempt to contact them in multiple ways like calling, texting, emailing, sending letters, and sometimes person A even threatens person B. This construct of individual stalking is sometimes referred to as unwanted pursuit behavior, although stalking doesn't have to be associated with some type of romantic relationship. It almost always is, but again, it doesn't have to be. So individual stalking is fairly common. At some point in their lives, 8% of women and 2% of men will be victims of this type of behavior. Gang stalking or group stalking is quite a bit different. It involves the use of multiple individuals to stalk, harass, or threaten a victim. The group must have at least 3 people in it and must be organized with a clear purpose. So we're not talking about stalking by proxy. So we're not talking about a situation where person A would hire a number of other people to threaten or spy on person B. Also, online bullying does not count as part of this definition. The phenomenon of gang stalking or group stalking is also reported much less than individual stalking. About 0.66% of adult women and 0.17% of adult men will have the subjective experience of being gang stalked at some point in their lives. Now, in approaching this subject from a neutral stance, like scientists would if they were conducting a study, the assumption would be that gang stalking could be real, like there could be a lot of people out there who are actually experiencing this, or it could be, in many cases, part of a delusion. This behavior is distressing to people if it's real and if it's a delusion. So either way, it's important to get a better understanding of this construct. In 2015, an exploratory study on gang stalking was published. In the study, the researchers compared gang stalking to individual stalking and noted a number of characteristics of the victims of gang stalking that distinguished them from victims of individual stalking. In the study, gang stalking victims tended to be mostly female. The stalking behavior lasted longer than what we tend to see with individual stalking. Almost all of the participants had no idea who the stalker was. Very few thought it was a former partner. That's quite different from individual stalking, where people would almost always know who the perpetrator was. We see that there was little or no unwanted communication in the form of letters, emails, and texts. They were more likely to report being spied on, secretly photographed, and having lies spread about them. They were more likely to be scared, depressed, have post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms, increased aggressiveness, and increased distrust. They were less likely to believe stalking had changed their personality. We see they are also more likely to report disruptions in their lives across many areas. Just a few examples: they tend to be more fearful about going out, their work performance was affected, they give up on social activities more, lose friends, they're more likely to carry a weapon, and probably most importantly, they tend to be more delusional. When putting all these clues together, it seems pretty clear that most victims of gang stalking are experiencing delusions. And this theory about delusions really explains a lot. It explains why they can't identify who's doing the stalking, why they're not getting written or digital communication, and why they experienced the stalking for such a long duration. Even though individual stalkers can stay around for a while, eventually they usually give up. But with the gang stalking, we see that it goes on for many years. There are many different ways to divide the subjective experience of gang stalking into categories. There are certain categories or beliefs that occur more frequently than others. Here's a list of some of the more popular categories of beliefs from a qualitative study. After each category, I will provide some of the exemplar quotes for that category from the study. I will paraphrase some of the quotes. So looking at the categories, we see that being followed occurs about 90% of the time. So 90% of the people who have the subjective experience of gang stalking endorsed this category. They believe they were being watched or followed. For example, I am followed by people wearing elaborate disguises, and cars are tailgating me, and the drivers are using walkie-talkies. Next category, multiple agencies are involved in the conspiracy. 80% believe this. So the government is behind it all with the help of local police, and the people are recruited by Homeland Security from Craigslist and the FBI. So I've heard about Homeland Security and the FBI as part of gang stalking. I haven't heard of Craigslist coming up too much. Next category is electronic surveillance, 60% here. My home is bugged, and I am a victim of 24/7 covert electronic surveillance. We see physical interference, 60%. So people are blocking me with grocery carts, people are invading my personal space, people on the street are running into me, and I've been forced off the road numerous times by cars when driving. Mind control is at 40%. The government is fully able to take control of everyone's thoughts, and they insert thoughts and ideas into my mind, and it took me a while to figure out that the thoughts were not mine. Electronic hacking is common, 40%. All my passwords are compromised, and information from my cell phone was stolen so that they can arrange street theater in which well-rehearsed live dramas take place. It's like half complaint and half compliment, right? It's like they enjoyed the street theater, but they were mad that it was part of a conspiracy. Next category, people sneaking into their house when they're not there, 35% endorse this. People break into my house when I'm not home and move stuff around, and I can't leave my house because they will move around my undergarments. Now, the last two categories are about people who are part of the conspiracy. We see police are part of the conspiracy, that's 30%, and neighbors are part, that's 25%. So we see things like state police helicopters are following me around, and many of my neighbors, but not all, are involved. Now, it's curious why somebody would think certain neighbors are involved and not others. I think a lot of this is based on to what degree those neighbors believe the individual who believes they're being gang-stalked. So if somebody tends to be a good listener and they tend to believe the person, usually that person will not think that other person is part of the conspiracy. So neighbors that are supportive might not get included in that conspiracy group. We see that these beliefs come with a lot of negative effects, like feeling isolated, and it can cause a desire to counterattack. So why hasn't gang stalking been studied too much? Well, in a way it really has been. Gang stalking is really a version of paranoid and persecutory delusions. What has changed? Why is this now something that's being discussed? Well, it's really about communication, specifically the ability to connect with an online, informal community of people who believe the same thing. There's something very powerful about feeling a sense of belonging, even if that connection is made because of a negative experience. Years ago, if somebody had delusions, they would interact mostly with family, friends, and mental health professionals. Now they can reach out to a much wider community. In one way, of course, that's good. They're finding support. In another way, it's unhelpful because it reinforces beliefs that are not positive, that could lead to negative outcomes. These communities often promote behavior like following law enforcement around, following politicians around, mental health professionals, and neighbors. Ironically, many of the people who say they're victims of gang stalking are actually engaging in stalking behavior. There have been a few notable cases where gang stalking has been connected to violence. For example, Aaron Alexis, sometimes called the Navy Yard shooter, who killed 12 people at the Washington, D.C. Navy Yard in 2013, Myron May, who in 2014 shot 3 people in the Florida State University library, and Gavin Long, who shot and killed 3 Baton Rouge, Louisiana police officers and wounded 3 others in 2016. Looking online, we find material designed to support targeted individuals, but much of that material is not from mental health professionals. Much of it is from people who consider themselves targeted individuals. It's easy to confuse quality information from misinformation. The way that people with these beliefs give advice to others with these beliefs is actually quite telling. Some of this information is written in a way that has good grammar, but the content, of course, is incorrect. A lot of it is really about how the paranoid feelings are justified, how there's a conspiracy, and how you can't let the fact that there is no evidence to support the claim get in the way. They say that mental health professionals, law enforcement, politicians, judges, lawyers, everyone is in on the conspiracy, except, of course, for the targeted individuals. They describe the typical targeted individual as having a very high IQ, a history of political activism, and being influential. It's like they see themselves as threatening to the mainstream culture, government, and society in general. One of the main challenges with these types of delusions is it's almost like they were perfectly engineered to prevent someone from getting mental health treatment. The delusions work against attempts to get help. It's ironic how the advice of mental health professionals in this situation could be something like, well, don't engage in those online discussions. Stay isolated from them. It's easy to understand how somebody with paranoia could look at that advice and say, that's exactly what the government wants me to do. They don't want me to team up with like-minded individuals because we're revolutionaries with great ideas and they're trying to stop us. So again, everything about the delusion resists treatment. The problem is that it's only going to get worse as these online communities increase in size. It's important not to dismiss the concerns about this type of delusion. If one were to imagine what it's like to believe that everyone is out to get you, it's really quite frightening. And it can facilitate somebody acting in a violent manner because they believe they are acting in their own self-defense. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comments section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be interesting. Thanks for watching.